Hey everyone, Kate with the Antique Book Collective, and today I'm getting to you guys with a nice little auxiliary video that goes off of my mass market paperback business that I run on the side of my antique book business, which is my main priority. So if you guys haven't been watching, I do have a few other videos on mass market paperbacks. Those are some of my best-selling items. I know that I shouldn't really be revealing my best niche on eBay because you guys might come in and poach that, but I welcome you guys to. It's a huge niche. There's not a huge amount of money profit in it. It takes a lot of storage. It is not for the faint of heart, but it can get you guys a whole lot of reviews really fast. I know it's not huge profit, but it can definitely stack up on how much profit you guys can get. You can buy these books for dirt cheap. I like to buy mine for 10 cents or less. I have spent as much as like $1 a piece, as 50 cents a piece is a little more common depending on the ones, because I know my business a little bit. I know which ones I can spend a little bit more on, but on average I like to do about 10 cents or less. I've even gotten them for free before because people just get rid of these mass market paperbacks because they have no value. If you guys don't know what a mass market paperback is, excuse me for a second. These here are mass market paperbacks, so they are just your standard tiny paperback books. Well, not your standard ones. Your standard ones are called trade paperbacks. They will be larger than the mass markets. The mass markets are as small as they can get. All the paper is like really cheap paper. So you guys know how Bibles have, they call it onion skin paper, some people do. These don't quite have that thin of paper, but it is a thinner paper. It's less quality. Those pages tend to yellow a whole lot faster. Basically, they're making these books as cheap as they can. They fall apart. For a lot of people, they fall apart after just a couple reads because these books are not made to last like a trade paperback and especially a hardcover book. Hardcover books are the most expensive books that you can get basically because they're made to last. I mean, that's why if you guys do antique books, that's why your hardcover books are most of your antique books that you get that look good. And on top of that, they didn't really make paperback books back in the day, but they last so long because they're so well made. With that said, though, I'm sure you guys are wondering about the mass market paperback business is how do you store those things? Are you just going to throw them in a pile? Like, what are you doing? So I'm just going to tell you guys how I store them, how you guys can store them, how I've seen them stored, all that sort of stuff and more. So sit tight and bear with me. So first things first is actually storing them in boxes. So these are the boxes that I ship some of these sets of books in. This is just a set of 10. I sell sets of 10. I sell sets of 20. I have sold larger sets in the past, but my box business that I buy my boxes from, they actually got rid of the boxes that I did do. So I can't actually sell too large of sets anymore because of them, but I do sell sets of 10 sometimes. This here is just my unsorted lot of mass market paperbacks that I sell. So nothing special to it. As you guys can see, the 10 books fills up this particular size box pretty well. And it works pretty well for me. I just fill it with paper. I wrap these books, I wrap all 10 of them together to make sure that they don't get too scuffed up as they're shipping out. But that is something that I do. The downside to storing them in the boxes that you're going to ship them in is there's a lot of extra space. So let me pick this up again. So this is not particularly the best box to show you guys for this, but there is some space here, there's some space here, and there's actually over an inch of space on top. On top of that, you have how thick the cardboard is. That actually does impact how much area you could store. So I cannot store books, as many books, in those kinds of boxes as I can if I do like a larger box or something like that. For me, the best thing that I have found for storing mass market paperbacks is not even on a shelf. Like, I know you can just shove a bunch on a shelf and balance them precariously and have a whole lot of fun trying to work that way out. That works, but even that doesn't work very well for me. What I have found works best for me is actually these little fabric tote things. So I've been buying these fabric totes for a little while now. Actually, the last group of them that I got had a couple issues, but I've been able to work through that. But these fabric totes, I don't have an actual count on how many books are in it, but there's quite a few books that go in these totes. As you guys can see, there is a spot right here. I'm trying to figure out a way to like fit these in the best that doesn't have this spot, but I am able to fit all the books 2 stacks deep. So I have 1 stack here and then another stack here. So basically I'm able to fit double as many books in that little area. And the nice thing about those totes is they don't take up shelf space. Shelf space, if you guys are booksellers, is a rare commodity. So with those fabric totes, it makes sure that the books are a little more protected than if you just left them on the ground. Honestly, if I was going to put this business into like a garage or something, I'd probably put them on like a pallet or something to make sure they're off the ground for moisture. But for me, I'm doing this in my house. It's a finished basement, off the ground, no concrete floors. Like so moisture's not an issue, so I can put these on the ground. But I do have the issue of maybe there's mice, maybe there's this, maybe there's this. So I do like to have the totes as a little bit of a line of defense. So those totes, I can also stack them. I like to stack them no more than 3 high. Once you go over 3 high, there's a chance that the book's on the bottom. So bear with me here. So you have the bottom ones, the next. The ones on the bottom, with the way that I stack these, so as you guys can see, they're just put in straight up and down. And the problem with that is when you do that, if you stack too many on top, there's a chance that the books might get like ballooned out or get crushed a little bit. So I don't like to stack more than 3. I find just stacking 3 totes high works pretty well. I'll be linking to these particular totes in the description below because I really enjoy these and I highly recommend them. But again, they're not the only way that you guys can store. So the next thing that you guys can do to store your books is just a large cardboard box. So not a small one that you're going to ship in, but just like a really large cardboard box. You can get those from Home Depot, from Walmart, from... I don't know if Office Depot has them, but I'm sure Office Depot has them. But cardboard boxes can do fine. Personally, I'm not too huge on doing the cardboard boxes because then I'm just wasting a cardboard box. Like, if you guys are buying a whole lot of books, you'll get some cardboard boxes for free, so just leave them in those potentially. For me, I've really learned how to stack mass market paperbacks really well in boxes, so I can get along fine with basically anything. I mean, those totes, as you guys can see, I do have some void space. Still working out the math on how to make the most of that, but most boxes that I put them in, there's like 0 void space whatsoever, which is really nice. So there's that. You can do cardboard boxes, or you can do plastic totes. I recommend plastic totes a little bit higher than cardboard boxes. Something nice about the plastic totes is you can put them out in your garage or wherever because the plastic is waterproof, so that's really nice. Be sure you have a nice seal on those though, otherwise more water gets in and just ruins them. That's what I sort of like about the fabric totes, is they're a little more breathable. That's why I recommend those. The plastic totes, though, they're not breathable. If you have like a couple stinky books in with your lot of books that you bought, that stinky book can stink all the other books up. Whereas with a fabric tote, that's a little less likely to happen. Something that I have recently started doing as well is I actually store some of my mass market paperbacks with some baking soda on them. I know that's really weird, but baking soda is actually an odor absorber. I actually had to do that because the last lot of fabric totes, not the books themselves, but the actual totes, they had a little bit of a smell on them, so I wanted to get some baking soda on them to get rid of the smell. There's, of course, other things you can do to get rid of smell, like an air purifier, which is what I use and highly recommend. But sometimes an air purifier is not enough. I find the fabric totes do pretty well with the air purifier because they are permeable, whereas a plastic tote is not. That'll just keep the smell inside that tote and make all the other books smell. So that's the issue with plastic totes. Final thing is rubber bands. You can store your mass market paperbacks with rubber bands. Problem is, they'll ruin your books. So something with rubber bands on mass market paperback books and any book in general is when you're doing it, you're actually bending the book on top and you're bending the book on the bottom. They're actually going to get a little dimple on both sides. Sometimes if you store them long enough, the rubber band's even going to like get to the point that it degrades. And when it degrades, it actually turns into like this crusty, terrible booger thing. Like, I've had so many of these mass market paperback books that I get that just have this crusty little line on them. I'm like, oh man, who sneezed like a projectile vomit sneeze thing? I mean, it's nasty as everything. Like, you wouldn't think that rubber degrades and turns into something that nasty, but guys, trust me, you do not want to do that on your books, especially if you're going to be doing this somewhere that it's warm. I find these things tend to degrade really bad when it's really warm, also really humid. Tends to really ruin the rubber bands. And again, on top of that, guys, the rubber bands just ruin the books a little bit more. For me, I like to sell my mass market paperbacks in good condition or better, and there's a chance that your rubber band can take a book from good condition to acceptable or even not acceptable, because these things can really rip up the books. Again, there are people that do it. There are places that are okay with it. Personally, I hate the rubber bands. Only thing I think rubber bands are good for is shooting somewhere. So that is definitely something that is worth keeping in mind when you guys are doing your mass market paperback business, or even your book business in general, is maybe you should avoid these rubber bands. Again, maybe you should buy them for your coworkers, so you could shoot them at your coworkers when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. But besides that, again, not recommended on that thing. If you do it, don't blame me. That was just a joke. But again, guys, the rubber bands, they are more likely to damage your books than to actually help you in the long run. I know it's nice for organization to be like, all right, this little rubber band holds 10 books. There we go, 10, grab it off the shelf, and we're good. But at the end of the day, guys, it's just going to hurt the books that are on the top, on the bottom, and potentially even the ones on the in between also. And when the rubber bands die on you, they will die really bad and ruin your day. I've had so many horror stories of rubber bands and all the bad things that they have done for people's businesses and even non-businesses. I actually had a teacher growing up, and they worked in the Navy, and they were in charge of all the money for the boat that they were on, or ship, sorry, and they wrapped all the things with old rubber bands, all the piles of cash, because the Navy has to deal with cash, and they had all the cash in these rubber bands, and when they went, they opened the safe with all the cash when they got to port, and all the rubber bands failed on them because the rubber bands were just a little bit old. So they all failed, and all the cash came spilling out, and because of the way that they had to do things back then, the guy actually had to recount every single bill by hand, which took hours and hours. So that's another thing that can happen with your rubber bands, is they can fail on you catastrophically and make a massive mess. So again, I don't recommend whatsoever rubber bands. I highly recommend doing a tote or a box or something along those lines. My favorite are the fabric totes. Again, I'm going to link to those in the description. But at the end of the day, guys, you guys can do whatever you want. Personally, I like the fabric totes the most because they are modular. I can stack them on top of each other. Like, they sort of sit inside of each other pretty well when you only do 2 deep like I do. Which is pretty nice. If you do like whatever box you get free from different book sales, sometimes you'll get the nice paper boxes. My favorites are the paper boxes that have a few reams of paper, and then you just put your books in there. Those work really well for me. But the problem is you don't get enough of those boxes sometimes, and they aren't the prettiest and all these sorts of things. So I find the fabric totes work the best for me. But at the end of the day, guys, again, it's up to you guys how you want to store your own mass market paperback books. With that said, though, if you guys are storing non-mass market paperback books, like actual hardcover books and stuff like that, I don't recommend storing them in totes and boxes and stuff like that. I recommend storing them in other places, so I'm actually going to link to a video right there on how to store those. And if you guys want to subscribe, be sure to do that there. And I know this is an abrupt way to end things, but that's how I store my books, and I hope you guys check out the other way of storing books, and I'll see you in the next one.